Hello, my friends, and welcome to episode number 1 of There Is No Spoon podcast. My name is Steven, and I'm a transformative life coach. I've got a passion for pondering the Big Bang questions, not so much the ones from outer space, but rather from the inner space. Questions about how our minds work, the nature of thought and their relationship with our feelings, how we as humans create our internal experience of our external world, and what that means for us both as individuals and within our communities. How do we live with and love each other, if there really is such a thing as an other? And I dig pondering who and what we truly are at our essence, and how to discover or rediscover our innate well-being and unlimited personal resilience to any and all the challenges and circumstances that we find ourselves in. Now, if that sounds like something that might blow your skirt up, perhaps you should come on in because the water's fine. This first episode is appropriately titled WTF-TINS, so I'd like to give you just a bit more context about this podcast so you can decide if it's a rabbit hole that you truly want to climb into or perhaps even tumble down. So let me start by explaining the title, There Is No Spoon. It'll probably be quite clear to you that this is my first ever podcasting rodeo. So, like everyone else, I simply Googled how to start a podcast. Now, I did find lots of good advice, and I followed most of it, except when it pertained to how to title a podcast. Every article and video that I saw made it very clear that the title should be a word or a phrase that is very searchable and that's already being searched a lot. And the title should also make it abundantly clear what the podcast is about so that a prospective listener would know right away, is this podcast for me? Well, I obviously failed miserably on both accounts with the title, There Is No Spoon. If you thought this might be a cooking podcast, you'll be disappointed. Now, to clear things up, There Is No Spoon is a quote from a scene in the sci-fi masterpiece, The Matrix. Now, if it's been a while since you've seen the movie and you don't remember the scene or the quote, no judgment. If you've never seen The Matrix, I'm bewildered by that, and I must admit there might be a little bit of judgment. However, I'm also rather envious because I would love to be in a position where I could see and have the experience of that movie for the very first time. If that's the case with you, I would suggest stopping this podcast and stopping whatever else you may be doing in the moment and watch that movie now. All right, allow me to set the scene for us. The main character of The Matrix is named Neo, played by Keanu Reeves. Now, I do have an admission, a guilty pleasure, if you will. I'm a Keanu Reeves fan. A lot of people forget just how many great movies he's been in, from Thumbsucker to Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, My Own Private Idaho, Point Break, Speed, and more recently the John Wick movies. Now, although I am a fan, I wouldn't dare argue that Keanu has a wide range of acting abilities. He doesn't have the acting chops of another one of my favorite actors like Joaquin Phoenix. However, what I believe Keanu does quite well and deserves kudos for is I think he chooses his roles relatively well. He stays within that limited range that he has. In this movie, The Matrix, his character Neo, for 95% of the movie, has no idea what's going on. So it's possible that Keanu could have just kind of shown up on the set and played himself without much preparation and done it quite well. I don't know that's the case, but I do have my suspicions. But I digress. The scene is that Neo is taken to see the Oracle because Neo may be the chosen one. He may be the human who's going to be able to save our species from the machines. So he's taken to see the Oracle, who's a woman who has the ability to see if indeed he is the one. Well, Neo is sitting in the waiting room, and while he's doing so, he is surrounded by other potential chosen ones. One of which is a young boy. He looks to be in the single-digit age bracket and appears to be a monk. He's got the shaved head, he's wearing robes, he's sitting on the floor, and he's holding a spoon, which he's bending with his mind. This is also known as telekinesis. Neo squats down next to the young boy and cocks his head in sort of an inquisitive way, and you think for a moment he might say, "Dude!" But luckily he doesn't. He just gives the inquisitive look, and the young boy responds, in what sounds like a British accent, but I'm not going to actually insult you or the British by trying to do a British accent. But here is what the boy says. Do not try and bend the spoon. That's impossible. Instead, only try to realize the truth. There is no spoon. Then you'll see that it is not the spoon that bends. It is only yourself. That's pretty badass, right? Now, this relates directly to what we call the inside-out understanding of life that we'll be exploring together throughout this podcast series. The inside-out understanding is in opposition to the prevailing paradigm, which can be referred to as the outside-in understanding. Basically, that the external world stuff and the circumstances that we find ourselves in have a direct and real effect on our internal experience. In other words, how you feel, your emotional well-being, moment to moment, is dictated by your environment. Now, if you believe this to be true, as most people do, then it makes perfect sense to attempt to manipulate your environment, whether that is your current circumstances, other people, or even yourself, as in self-improvement. It makes sense, metaphorically speaking, to try to bend spoons. However, what Spoon Boy is pointing towards, at least as far as I can tell, is the realization that manipulating externals is a simple misunderstanding of how change actually occurs, or perhaps, even more fundamentally, how life itself is structured and how it works. Now, if that all sounded like a bunch of existential horseshit to you, no worries, I get that a lot. However, if you can get even a slight whiff of what I'm stepping in here, it might be worth hanging around for a bit. Here's a question for you. What would it mean to you and the way you navigate your way through life if there was no such thing as an inherently stressful situation, or a fundamentally irritable person, or even a bad day? I can tell you what it means for me and my clients. It means freedom, and not just some specific element of freedom like religious freedom or financial freedom or even food freedom. I'm talking about authentic freedom, which of course includes all those elements, but is more fundamental and has a broader reaching implication. Now, this may sound a bit esoteric, so in the next episode, I'll provide some of my personal journey backstory and at least a general roadmap about where we'll be heading with our wandering, pondering conversations. Until next time, keep in mind, there is no spoon. It's not spoons that bend, it's you. Be swell and stay bendy, my friends.